Once you have your pencil drawing of what you want to print, you're going to need to start going through and adding textures, values, and outlining some areas of your print to make them more impactful in the printmaking process. For adding all of your textures and thickening up your lines, we're going to be using these black India ink pens. They're typically used for manga, but we are going to use them for our line drawings. There's all different pen tips and they're marked at the tip. So M for medium, B for brush, F for fine, and S for small. If you look at the tips, you'll actually be able to see the differences in between them. For my first step, I'm going to use the fine pen, and that is marked with an F. You can also use the small pen as well. I like to start with my smaller pen values. So I use the fine tip to go through and start outlining all of my main lines. I can always make my lines thicker, but I can't really make them thinner. So that's why I'm starting with the fine tip instead of the medium or the brush. And as I'm going, I'm using different hatching methods and stippling methods. I use the stippling methods to create value. Your brush pen marked with a B on the top is really great for going through and tapering and thickening up lines because it has a little bit of give in the tip here. I'm using my brush pen to go through and taper some of these lines. So you can see that I can get a really nice thin to thick and then back to thin again line here with my leaves, which adds just a little bit of value and extra texture and dimension to my overall line drawing. It calls some extra attention to those areas as well since they are thicker lines than everything else. Now I'm looking at where my petals overlap and adding some hatching marks to wherever things are overlapping to add some extra value. So this is going to add some darker values and give it some dimension in my drawing. I'll keep going with that same process of outlining all of my main shapes and then going in with my different size pens to create values and different areas of texture and different areas as focal points till I'm happy with the amount of lines and values and details on my print. As I'm drawing, I'm going to keep in mind that with screen printing especially, all of these lines that I'm drawing are the only areas where ink is going to be. So unless I want a very subtle print, I am going to need to go through and thicken up some major areas to let more ink through and to call more attention to the colors that I'm using in my print. This is an example of a partially finished print where some areas are thickened and some are just outlined. And here's an example of a fully finished drawing where I have gone through and added all of my textures and values and paid really close attention to where that ink is going to be and what ink I'm letting through.